Hello and welcome to your bonus Gifted, Talented, and Neurodiversity Awareness Week episode. This is a cheeky little episode that I thought I would provide as a bonus because it was a little special part of the conversation I had with Marc Smolowitz last week. And the question I asked him was like he's been researching giftedness for, as he said, I think about 8 years now. He's now at the epicenter of this growing community and movement around giftedness, and he's gathered people from all over the world doing all this awesome stuff in our gifted community. And I wanted to know, because sometimes I'm like, I want to be a fly on the wall for Marc Smolowitz, and just the people he meets, the stuff he's doing is absolutely wonderful in the name of developing his film, The G Word. But I'm like, Mark, what has been the most surprising thing, the most interesting thing? Like, just what has been that thing, And so when he answered that question, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting when I asked the question. Sometimes you ask questions and you kind of know where people are going to go. And sometimes you're like, I'm going to throw that out there and I don't know where it's going to go. I didn't really expect this response. And I love the honesty of it. And I thought, that's actually a bit special. And I felt like there's something in this response that really speaks to the heart, naturally, of why we're needing to have these conversations about giftedness. So I started this podcast because I felt very deeply in my heart that there was this massive misunderstanding about what giftedness is. And that was not okay. And it was not good enough. And with communication and bringing everyone to the table, there is enough information and research out there that we could learn better and we could do better. But it comes down to getting everyone at the table, talking, understanding, and being willing to be open to learning about ultimately what our kids need. Because the truth lies in the fact that every child is a gift, but is not gifted. But every child deserves to access an equitable education, something that provides what they need to shine. And we need to get beyond that misunderstanding that giftedness is somehow a privilege, limited to certain demographics or choice. And we need to understand that giftedness is about being neurodivergent. And that is not just one demographic within society. Doesn't matter what culture you are, what gender, what sexuality, where you come from, how much money your family has got. You can be that neurodivergent, gifted kid or adult. And so it's incumbent upon us as the adults in the room to meet the needs of our children who are in our charge. And that is, as an adult, not just my kids, like all the kids, right? We are the adults in the room. We have to get it. So that's why we tell stories here at Our Gifted Kids, because as parents, we need decision makers to get the real impact this has on our lives every single day, on our kids' lives every single day, and not just our kids' lives today, but into the future. So this is critical stuff. This is a demographic hugely misunderstood. And so Mark's response to my question about what is the most surprising thing, interesting thing, speaks to this. And I really want everyone to hear it. And so I thought this needs to be a little bonus podcast. It's not long and it's worth a listen. And it just speaks to that misunderstanding that we so desperately need to fight against. Now, I know these things must be hitting a nerve because over Gifted, Talented Neurodiversity Awareness Week, over the last kind of week and a half, there have been over 9,000 listens of this podcast. Like, personally, that boggles my brain because I'm just kind of doing the best that I can. It's far from a smooth operation. But it says to me, there's a lot of parents out there who need this community, need these conversations, and are trying to make sense of their world for their kids. So we've been talking all week about how to get involved, how to be a part of that community, how to engage. And I wholeheartedly, as a very proud partner of the G Word, encourage everyone to subscribe to the G Word website. And if you can, if you are able to support the G Word in getting across the line financially so that we can see this wonderful documentary that I know it will be, and I know will help our gifted movement. And if you can't make a financial contribution, that's okay. Not all of us can. But what you can do is share the story with others. And what you can do is be a part of that conversation, even if it's just following on social media, subscribing, being there, being involved is taking action. And it's helping us make that impact. Likewise, our gifted kids to continue our conversations and this work that we feel is really important, we could also use your support. So if you have found the podcast helpful, then maybe you would be prepared to help us as well. And likewise, you could share it with a friend, help us get the word out about the podcast. If you love an episode, leave a review on your podcast player because that helps other people find us as well. If you particularly loved an episode, you can always say thanks with cake. There's a button on our link tree if you're so inspired. Or for as little as a coffee per month, you can support us and get a little something back. So we have created 3 new options to support the podcast and get a little bit more involved. One equates to a coffee a month, one equates to a coffee per week, and one equates to 2 coffees per week. Yes, I have a coffee issue. It's my Italian genes. It gets me through the day. I love coffee, the smell of coffee, the taste of coffee. Like, I'm kind of like, you know, it's getting me through the day at the moment. So what can I say? Nonetheless, a little coffee offering from yourself could help our gifted kids also get through the day. So let me tell you a little bit about what you get back. So for a coffee a month, you can be a part of our community called Dip Your Toes In. And it is just dipping your toes in to the community. You get your own exclusive online portal that you can sign into. And within that, you get member-only videos of the podcasts. Every podcast now comes with a principle with those key messages. Because you know what it's like. You listen to a podcast, you're like, oh, I got to remember that and that. And often you don't. Well, that's me anyway. So there's a principle on that online portal. You've got the podcast audio, you've got the videos, and you've also got bonus playlists, which we will rotate about different topics. So it's all there at your fingertips to engage with, and it's all totally searchable, which is actually the cool thing. Because we've got like 70 podcasts now. And if you're looking for a particular thing, you don't want to have to sift through them all, so you can actually search it. That was the whole point of the software I chose. It's great. So you've got it all there at your fingertips, and it's all there. The whole point of our gifted kids is to make life easier for parents. Or for a coffee per week, we have an option called Be Seen and Found. And in Be Seen and Found, you get all the things associated with dipping your toes in, but you get a different portal and it's much bigger. It's a whole library of resources that we've been building over the last year and a half. You also get a course, which is like a journey to a new normal. It's kind of taking you through the parenting of gifted kids process. You get a private Facebook group, and you get a bonus course called Unpacking Gifted, which goes through like everything about giftedness. In little bite-sized chunks, we break down what all the things mean. And there's also components in there about giftedness in the classroom. There's a whole bunch of extra resources. Like, it's pretty comprehensive. If you want to know anything about giftedness, then that's a very, like, that will cover it all, let me tell you. So if you feel more inspired, if you're like, hang on, I am on a mission to thrive and I need actually not just to be a part of a community, but to really dive in, well, then for 2 coffees a week, we do have an option called Mission to Thrive. You get everything from the other 2 options, but you also get quarterly guest webinars, quarterly online gatherings with like presentations and socializing, and a discovery call with myself to help you unpack where you're at. And of course, the bonus course and the parenting program as well as the private Facebook group and stuff like that. So what we're trying to do here is provide something for everyone, no matter where you're at, whether it's like, you know what, I just want to coffee a month, support the podcast. Awesome. Thank you. Or if you're like, actually, I'm knee deep in this, I'm going to go all the way, then there's something for you too. It is, frankly, excellent value because here at Our Gifted Kids, we value inclusivity and we've tried to make it as accessible to everyone as we possibly can. You can cancel at any time. You are not tied into anything. We use Stripe. It's all very secure. So doors close this Thursday, the 3rd of November at midnight, wherever you are. And supporting us helps us to grow and keep going and do more cool things for you and parents of gifted kids. And we have plans, believe me, for lots more cool things. But we need to get a little bit bigger before we can do those things. So listen to the podcast. Let me know what you think about Marc's insights. Check out ourgiftedkids.com/hub to learn more about the different options we have, or you can go to our link tree for links. I hope you enjoyed the week. It's been massive. How many episodes have we done? We've actually done 7 episodes. Like, I've lost count. It's been huge. We're also going live on Facebook as often as I can because honestly, I'm a little bit knackered. And we're on Instagram as well. And we also have a free Facebook group. Like I said, it's all about being inclusive and there's something for everyone. So whether it's sharing with your friends or getting more involved in that mission to thrive, there is something for you too. Stay quirky. We'll see you soon. And as always, let me know what you think and how you're going. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Hi, I'm Sophia Elliott. As a parent of 3 gifted kids, I'm here to talk about all things gifted because I've been isolated and uncertain, and I felt like that parent. Then I found peace of mind, support, and my community. This podcast is about sharing that journey, actually parenting gifted kids, and connecting with advice and support. So we have everything we need for every member of our family to thrive. This is the Our Gifted Kid podcast.
But one question I want to ask you is, given what I would be interested in, being an absolute data nerd for all things gifted and neurodiverse, is like, given that network and the years you've spent kind of deep diving, like you're at this epicenter of this rising gifted community, building in energy to really break down some of those old misconceptions about giftedness. What are some of the most interesting or surprising things you've encountered or learned or seen coming out of that gifted community over the last few years? Have there been things that have really kind of like didn't expect that, didn't see that coming?
Oh my God, so many things. I mean, that's the rich part of the job. That's the gift that I get to experience every day. I mean, one of the things I talk about is the community that I've come to become very close with, that I've helped to cultivate around the movie, and how impressed and touched and inspired I am every day by all of you. I mean, that's the gift that I get every day as the filmmaker, right? Is all of you. But I do see and experience some pretty amazing things that I think I'm in a unique position as a storyteller to kind of notice and then kind of interpret in even through our impact work. And I think that, we are somehow, I'm a liberal left-leaning guy. That those are my politics, and I think people know that about me. You look me up and you see that, right? I'm gay, I'm, live in San Francisco, figure it out, right? But one of the things about storytelling, and of course there's a perspective in storytelling, and I bring a lens to it, is that it can be fairly neutral and welcoming terrain for people. And so one of the ways I describe the movie and the kind of efforts that we've created around it is, I like this movie to feel like a room. And I want the room to be welcoming and warm. I want the door to be open, unlocked, open, come on in. I want the windows open, light coming in. There's no darkness. Like there is light, right? And you are welcome. And this is a safe space, and we can have debate, we can have discourse, we can agree to disagree, right? And there's going to be certain folks from certain political perspectives that are just not going to get what I'm about, right? They don't like the term equity, they don't lean into it in a way, they're even triggered by it and have a reaction to it. And I understand that. And that is a part of the puzzle here that has been difficult and troubling at times. It's made the journey imperfect, as every journey is, right? When you make a movie about something that is kind of implicitly or explicitly controversial to some, like you're going to hit up against that controversy, and it's going to be painful, right? So we've experienced pushback as a movie because of our equity position and how we're telling these stories and how we're choosing to tell them. And the most kind of difficult piece of that is the transphobia that I've experienced, and that's been extremely painful for me. And I think I've maybe even talked to you about this in the past. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Have this conversation a lot. But long story short, one of the 6 stories in our movie is trans, and I am a big trans ally. A lot of my movies are with trans filmmakers and tell trans stories. It's not all I do. It's certainly not all the G word is about, but it's in the room, and it's interesting to me because there are so many trans and gender nonconforming teens and tweens who are gifted and neurodiverse, and so that was something I wanted to put in the movie that I decided to make, and I'm doing it that way, right? So I've experienced some of that, kind of right wing transphobia, or maybe people wouldn't even call it right wing. It's just kind of transphobia in general. So that's been troubling, right? But the piece of the puzzle that is more, I think, broadly troubling, that isn't about necessarily like people having a transphobic response to the movie, is the way that gifted education has emerged again as a kind of political tool, both on the right and the left in America, to kind of, make it problematic again. So on the one hand, you have people on the right of the political spectrum who kind of use it. It's like, it's elitist, it's exclusionary from that perspective. These are very anti-intellectual people who don't believe in investing in certain things that might, kind of fall under the banner of gifted, or people on the right wing who've actually linked it with something called critical race theory. I'm not sure if that's a concept in Australia you've been hearing much about, but there's something called critical race theory, which has become like this bizarre blanket term for any effort in the United States to, kind of talk openly about race or racism in the education system. And it's just a bunch of BS, because that's not actually what critical race theory is. It's not taught in schools. It's something at the university level, but it's been co-opted by the right wing, and it's really politicized school boards, and it's a sort of crazy making kind of thing, and it's actually influenced some local elections, some governors elections, and gifted education has actually been in that conversation with critical race theory in ways that are just bizarre and almost schizophrenic, and it's just all fake news kind of stuff, right? Like just making up crap about gifted, and because there might be some interest in making gifted programs more diverse and more inclusive, and that somehow that's aligned with some weird affirmative action narrative or this kind of craziness. No, for me, what it's about is that there's smart kids everywhere. They're from every background, and if they happen to be Black, brown, and poor, think of the societal benefit if we could actually find them, actually cultivate them, and do great things with them and for them to help them meet their potential. That's the narrative. There's a social benefit there, right? Meet these great smart kids where they are. Let's not have them end up in prison. Let's have them turn their smarts into something positive for society. It's not rocket science, right? So that's the sort of right wing piece. Then the left wing, which is usually where I feel more at home, there's this kind of eradication of gifted education narrative happening in the last few years that is really troubling, which is sort of says that gifted education is actually coming out of Eurocentric, white supremacy, patriarchal stuff, and therefore has to be eradicated, right? And there is an argument there that I want to honor, that that IQ testing actually originates from some pretty bizarre assumptions about who
Yeah.
is smart and who should be assessed. Okay, and that's actually even kind of in our movie, right? I mean, you can sort of look back to the origin of the IQ test, and actually kind of goes back to eugenics. So it's pretty troubling stuff. Okay, so I'm not saying that the left is 100% whole cloth wrong, right? But this idea of turning gifted education into a kind of, a debate and has to be eradicated because it's racist, like it's inherently racist and could never not be racist, like that really devalues the important and powerful work that our gifted scholars of color have been doing for more than 40 years in this field, right? And our movie is all about those folks. And our movie profiles them, it centers them and the deep work they've been doing to make sure that Black and brown kids actually are being discovered. And they've been going into school districts and trying to help these school districts figure out how to discover them, right? And so if you talk to any of those folks and they're in our movie, Joy Lawson Davis is one of the most noticeable ones in our movie. You know, these folks will go in and they will say, do not eradicate these programs. Dismantling gifted will not make it easier to find smart kids who live in poor zip codes. Like that's just not going to happen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask me like the surprising stuff, like that's the crazy stuff. Like I have to actually operate as a storyteller in the middle of those two political poles, right? Of the right and the left having this kind of schizophrenic narrative around what is gifted education in the United States. And dare I be so bold, both sides are wrong. They don't get it. And our movie, I hope, is going to kind of course correct this and kind of lean into a different way of talking about the benefits of a gifted education program in general, right? And no program is perfect, no school is perfect, no school district is perfect, nothing is perfect, right? Implementation of any kind of program is always going to have its hiccups, right? But we have to try. We have to try, and like if we don't, we're never going to find these kids. And there's so
Mm-hmm.
many of them out there. um there's another narrative in the United States around what we call merit-based high schools, and how there's an overrepresentation of Asian American kids in merit-based high schools, right? And so there's like this idea of like eliminate the merit-based high schools because they're racist and there's only white and Asian kids going there, and there's no space for other folks who are from different backgrounds. And the Asian and white kids or families over here are saying, well, but our kids are performing well. Like, why should they suffer, right? So what I'm getting at here is that everyone should feel like they're being seen and heard, and no one group should have to suffer at the hands of another being given access to something, right? What's wrong with that is that we're actually talking about it in the wrong way, right? And so I think eliminating merit-based high schools probably isn't the solution to what the problem of systemic racism is in this country, right? So we have to do deeper work at the level of the schools themselves and figure out, okay, how do we get those Black and brown kids into those merit-based high schools, and what does that even look like, right? So this year in San Francisco, where I live and work, we had this horrible recall election for our Board of Education, where 3 of our board members were recalled because of this kind of merit-based craziness. And they were all about, eliminating these merit-based high schools in San Francisco, of which there are a couple of them. And it became quite toxic. And the pandemic dynamics of schools being closed and virtual learning really kind of separated people from each other, and it just got more and more toxic. So there was this bitter recall election. And after the recall election happened, one of the groups that was really involved in trying to figure out the what and the why of that recall election, they reached out to me. I was really delighted because it's right here in my own city. We're following our movie, and asked us if we could help do a webinar to connect them with some of those Black scholars that I just was talking about. So we could introduce the San Francisco Unified School District audience to this idea that Black giftedness actually is a thing. Like, it actually is a thing, okay? There can be Black gifted kids, and it can happen, okay? And so we put together a panel called Young, Gifted, and Black, bringing equity into focus for the San Francisco Unified School District. And we had 2 very top tier Black gifted scholars who've been doing this deep work for years, talk to 2 people in the district and be in conversation together. And that has nothing directly to do with the G word, right? But we were the hosts, we did that. It was our way of giving back to my local city, which I'm always delighted when I can do that, but also the larger community, because it was virtual, anyone could watch it anywhere. And that was a wildly popular webinar. We had incredible response on social media. So So I know that when we can support those difficult discussions to kind of get
Mhm.
people in the room to think out loud together, kind of strip away the kind of political craziness that for some reason schools and school boards and all this craziness kind of attracts, like that piece is heartbreaking to me. Like there is a social contract here in the United States that says that every child should have access to a free and fair appropriate education. And like, if we're not working on that, if that's not a work in progress all the time, like, what are we doing? Right.
Mm.
And what that means is that wherever a child goes to school, they should have, ultimately the same access as the other children in their city or town. Right. And we know that that's not how that works. There's just, there's a lack of equity everywhere. So bringing equity into school conversations is going to be a great thing because it gets people thinking on their feet about how to treat schools as a different kind of phenomenon. It's keep remind them it's for everyone. These are public schools. It's a social contract, right? It's no wonder that parents like who can afford private schools throw up their hands because there's so much craziness and politicizing, of our public schools and unfairly so. And so yeah, so the extremes are the troubling piece, right? And but guess what? That's the important work we need to do is to really work and push through those challenges. And along the way, it's the communities that and the people that I get to interact with that inspire me, that every day to do this work and help me keep my chin up and look at the world and all this craziness as through the sense of that the glass is half full. Okay, the glass is not half empty. The glass is half full. I wake up every day and remind myself of that because I have to.
Mm.
And I mean, education is for everyone, and it really has to be. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. And home and school are a system that has to serve the child, right? And if that's not what we're all aiming for, regardless of who that child is, whether he, she, they are white, black, brown, yellow, green, queer, or trans, okay, they should be welcome in school. They should be able to express themselves in school and be safe in school, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
these are, so I'm not sure if that was the answer you expected, but gifted
Good to know.
education is a prism into all kinds of issues that people don't
Mm.
expect. And I experience it doing this work every day, every week.
That's yeah, that I mean, that's yeah, that's a very interesting response to that question. But like listening to you tell that story, it's kind of like at every key point, the issue there is diversity and inclusion, accepting others as they
Yes.
are, and people who are either
Yes.
afraid of that diversity, trying to, you know, uh, create diversity, but doing it in the wrong way because they're really not understanding what giftedness is all about. And that's a challenge, isn't it? It's like that true understanding what giftedness is as a neurodivergent state of being, and that anyone can be gifted, like you say, regardless of culture, race, sexuality, gender, socioeconomic, like it just doesn't matter. Giftedness is
Yeah.
everywhere, and it's just about bringing everyone to the
Well,
table, isn't it? Like,
and
yeah.
this is why the movie is called the G word, because it's such a
Yeah.
problematic concept, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
rough, tough concept with all kinds of baggage. And the
Hmm.
G word, I always explain the G word is the F word. That's the word we
Yeah.
can't, it's the word we can't say out loud, right?
Yeah.
And so when you kind of so folks who are advocates for the gifted and twice exceptional, our job is to figure out other words to use to describe it.
Mm.
And guess what? Visual storytelling, making a movie is a great way to describe it because it
Yeah.
puts a different kind of lens and a face
Yeah.
on what it looks like. And so that's been the goal, right? Is to
Yeah.
really use powerful storytelling to keep
Yeah.
people in the conversation in a way that gets them to think differently
Yeah.
about this stuff. And that has been the most interesting part of these last 7 years is that I never expected to see a movement in motion the way that I have experienced it. When I first began this movie and I discovered what twice exceptionality is, and I met some families and started to research it, it was like this little nascent thing that was happening. And lo and behold, it's a movement, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's a movement that is created by parents who have self-organized, who have children who are complex, who insist on their children being seen, and rightly so, because they see a certain child at home that the school is not discovering or encouraging, right? And
Mhm.
so that mismatch comes out of a certain expectation that these parents have grown up in a society that tells them that their kids should get to go to school and feel safe and supported every day. And when that doesn't happen, right, it's heartbreaking. And so the parents feel trauma, right? And instead of sitting on their laurels and being stuck in trauma, the moms and the dads of the struggling 2E kids, who are also gifted kids, have started to self-organize. And here we are years later, not that many years later, and it's really like a movement in motion. And so I didn't expect that. I didn't know that I was like, walking into that. And that has been incredibly dynamic, extremely exciting, and a beautiful opportunity as a filmmaker and an activist to support those people because it's important work. Um, when I first started the movie, there were folks who said to me things like, there are probably 300,000 twice exceptional students in our schools who are undiscovered and, being crushed and put into special ed programs. Now people have that, that number could be, much, much higher if we
Oh,
really
yeah.
look at it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's, let's say there's 1 million students, right, across 50
Yeah.
states who are 2E, unidentified, and struggling, and have been put in special ed and are being crushed by that experience. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing if we're not trying to
Yeah.
get those kids out of that room into a different room, right?
Yeah.
Now, special ed needs to be there for some students. Okay, we know
For
that,
sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't mean that every kid who's in there actually should be in there, right? And we know that this is a culture where misdiagnosis is so often a through line of how things go down because
Mhm.
of the conditions in which children are being assessed. So
Mm.
in our movie, assessments is a huge theme. Like assessments
Yeah.
is almost in every story.
Yeah.
Testing, identification, assessments, you'll see it in every story, and how to do it differently, how to do it better, how to do it in ways that aren't biased, that really
Mhm.
discover kids and meet them where they are.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing about that and what an important job you're doing on highlighting the diversity within us all. So, on that note, how can people support the G word and start to be a part of the movement and the conversation?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, first of all, go to the gwordfilm.com. That's our website. And the
Mhm.
gwordfilm.com is your hub for everything, right? So all the GTN awareness programming links will be there. You can register, you can sign up, you can connect. You should follow us on social. We're at the G Word Film, and we're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. We're very active. I have an incredible co-producer named Danielle Holke who does all of our social marketing, and she is right there in real time monitoring all the important topics and sharing stories and really lively and engaged with people in real time. And we want you to be a part of our social media community. Yeah, there's just that's the point of entry. And then if you are so moved and you like what you see, you can make a donation to the G Word documentary. We in the United States anyway, we operate as a 501c3 nonprofit so we're a charity through a fiscal sponsor. So folks here in the US can get a tax deduction for their donation through the Center for Independent Documentary. And that sometimes motivates people to want to donate. I mean, we've had more than 700 donors make donations to this movie. So take that very seriously. That's a huge, vote of confidence and trust in me as a filmmaker. And I'm really grateful for everyone's donations. We've had people donate from $5 to $50,000. And so if you're out there and you're listening and you're rich and you want to be an executive producer on a movie, send me an email and I'm happy to hear from you. We'll talk deal terms. But if you're someone who just, like we so, know that the culture of philanthropy is that, people join organizations that they're passionate about, so I would be
Mhm.
honored to have you and your listeners, consider the G word be something that you would like to support this year among the many important causes that you probably support in your own life and in your own communities. We can't do this alone. It takes a village to make a movie. It takes a village to support the movement around the movie. But go to our website, learn about our partners, 80 groups, and many of them in your state or your town or your country doing great work where you can connect and learn more about what it means to be gifted for yourself, your kids, your teachers, your all the stakeholders that are kind of in the room. Everybody touches our community. I mean, I'll leave you with this today. Like, no one movie can be all things to all people, and I would never pretend that, right? We're going to do our best job to make this as meaningful for as many people as we can. And it's really the impact work around the movie that will sort of fill in the rest, right? The G word doesn't belong just to me and the people around me who are helping to make it. It belongs to everyone who has a connection to these themes, these stories, and these concepts, right? So when you see the G word, you're going to see 6 stories that I've chosen that I think are powerful. But I hope it will hold up to you like a mirror and get you to think about this stuff in your own life and in your own way and in your own time. And if I've done my job and I've touched your heart, made you think, maybe surprised and delighted you a little bit, when the lights come up in the movie theater, or you look at each other, at home when, in the living room when you're done watching, like, let me know what you think. This is a virtuous act. We're making art. Feedback is important. I don't pretend to know everything. I'm well studied and deeply researched, but I'm learning all the time. And the GWER Enterprise is exactly a reflection of that. Like join us and be a part of the movement. And we'd be delighted to welcome you.
Well, I thoroughly look forward to the next chapter and getting across the line with that last bit. And like Marc said earlier, there's a little bit more fundraising to do. We're at the 24th mile in the marathon. So by all means, if you have the opportunity to support the G Word film, get across the line. That would be amazing. And in the meantime, get involved in Gifted Talent and Neurodiversity Awareness Week. So much cool stuff. I'll put all of those links in the show notes so that you can find everything. And Marc, thank you for your time this evening. It's been an absolute delight to catch up again. I look forward to eventually coming back and you're like, it's out.
I can't wait. And my dream of dreams is to join you down there in Australia, screen the movie in person, and we can celebrate together.
That is a wonderful dream. Let's hold on to that because that'd be amazing. Well, take care. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm very excited about next week's activities and all the exciting joy that we get to share next week.
Hashtag gifted joy. Let's do it.
Hashtag
Thanks so much,
joy.
Sophia.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and it inspired you in some way, I'd love to hear about your biggest takeaway in the comments. For more episodes, you can subscribe, and to help others find our podcast, please leave a review. You can find show notes and more resources at ourgiftedkids.com and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. See you in the same place next week.